welcome back to the Tea and a Butty podcast. I'm Dominic.
And I'm Erica.
And today's episode is another Places We Want to Go.
Yeah, we haven't done one of these.
We haven't done one of these in a long time for the general public.
Yeah.
And so here we are, the Places We Want to Go. Can you guess what it is this week? No, you can't. Because you don't know, do you? We didn't put out anything on social media.
I mean, it could literally be anywhere. But so far, we're still sticking with British places we want to go.
We are.
Yeah.
We're sticking with the British
So
places.
if you can guess a place in Britain.
Because we've got quite a lot of American listeners, so.
Yeah. Yeah, so we just kind of talk about places we want to go in case it's places that they may want to go to. Yeah. I think
but
the
it's
majority of our audience is American.
Yeah.
I think the majority of our audience is American.
Yeah.
I was going to say. So British people may or may not have already been to a lot of the places we've mentioned.
Maybe, yes.
Maybe they want to go there too. You never know.
You never know. They may never have been.
I think we talked about one time some vloggers that we watched that one of them lives in England and has never been to Scotland.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I think
never been to Scotland. Never been to Wales.
I think that can be a
never
thing.
Never been to Cornwall.
Yeah.
Never been to Northern Ireland.
I mean, I live in Texas and have my entire life, and I've never been to Louisiana.
Louisiana?
Yeah. I know that's kind of like, I don't know. I don't know how people might feel about that. You know, I don't know if we have any Louisiana listeners, but yeah, I don't know.
Someone's living in. We have a couple of Louisiana listeners, I think.
Yeah, it's not that I don't want to go over there, but
we just haven't found the time.
I really would like to go there, actually, but I just haven't been for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I'll make it there one day. We will make it there.
Yeah,
one day,
we'll go there, and we'll just be in Louisiana.
Yeah,
we'll be doing the Harry Connick Jr. thing, you know. Anyway, this Places We Want to Go is actually a self-governing island.
Mm-hmm.
That's a British Crown dependency. Can you tell what it is yet? And
can you explain what that means? Well, let's say where it is first.
It's the Isle of Man.
Yeah.
Or Man with two N's, as they call it the Man Isle or whatever. And it's a self-governing British Crown dependency in the Irish Sea between Britain and Northern Ireland. The head of state is the Queen Elizabeth. She holds the title of Lord of Man and is represented by a Lieutenant Governor. And the United Kingdom is responsible for the island's military defence. Crown dependency, basically, somehow they manage, it's kind of like the Channel Islands.
Yeah. Which are south of
the
Britain.
UK. Yeah, they're closer to France than they are to the UK, but for some reason they belong to the UK.
Yeah. I mean, say for some reason, usually there's something there that at some point in time the country wanted, and that's why they claimed the islands
and
or
I mean,
the whatever.
The Isle of Man, it's next, it's near enough to Britain.
Yeah.
That it would be claimed, you know, by Britain. But for some reason, it's never been like, oh yeah, that's just an island belonging to England or Scotland or, Northern Ireland, you know. Because it's closer, actually. Scotland actually had control of the island at one point.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, the Vikings and stuff invaded.
Yeah.
You know, the Vikings were all over the UK.
Uh-huh.
And then the King of Norway, at some point, ceded the islands to Scotland. And then Scotland, for some, I guess, just gave them up after a while. You know, it was like carved up.
The islands?
The island. Because there are little islands around it, but then there's the big isle.
You know? I'm going to interrupt you here for a second.
Oh, yes.
Like I always do. And say, I'm going to make a really general statement, but I think that a lot of Americans, I don't know, we don't think of there being like islands around the UK or around Britain, you know, because
it's an island in itself.
I guess so, but usually there are little islands around a bigger island, aren't there?
Yeah.
But I think
islands in the stream.
I think
that is what we are.
I think it's not because we think of the UK as an island, but I think it's because we don't think of the UK as an island.
Yeah, you just think of it because
it's a country.
Because, I mean, like this...
It's part of Europe.
Yes,
is what we say, what we like to say over here.
Europe.
It's a country, like, that, the end, you know? We don't ever hear about any islands. Like,
those European weirdos, man.
Like, I mean, I think that when, like, I don't know, am I wrong in saying that it's pretty commonly known that Hawaii is part of the United States in Britain?
I guess. I mean, you're asking the wrong person here, because I kind of know a little bit about geography. So I just assume everyone else in Britain knows, too.
Yeah.
Knows roughly where all the states are and on the
I guess Hawaii is not really...
Roughly where Canada and Mexico are. If Mexico's north and Canada's south,
I guess Hawaii's not...
I know, Canada's north and Mexico's south.
I guess Hawaii's not, like a good example, because Hawaii is an actual state of the United States.
It used to be...
Maybe, let's say, Puerto Rico. I don't know.
Probably not. I'd say they'd probably not think it was part of the U.S.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's, it's a territory of the US, isn't it? It's like Guam and... So
maybe I'm not like...
The U.S. Virgin Islands.
Right, yeah.
Because there's the British Virgin Islands, too.
Yeah.
And I think they're on the same island, aren't they?
I'm not sure.
I'm not
sure.
Sure.
But I think, maybe I'm not wrong then in saying that many Americans probably don't know about, like, the Isle of Man and the Channel Islands and, what is it, Guernsey? Or is Guernsey part of the Channel Islands?
Guernsey's part of the Channel Islands, yeah.
And, like, the...
Channel Islands are Jersey and Guernsey. Okay. And then there's Sark as well.
But then there's also the Isle of Wight.
The Isle of Wight's right next to Britain. That's part of England.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's a bunch of islands up on the north of Scotland. Just north of Scotland,
the Hebrides, right? And, the Western Isles.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
They were kind of like an island at some point in history, around the, like the Alfred the Great period. I think they were kind of like an island nation. They were islands nation. They were like just islands.
Oh yeah.
They were that because back then nothing was really connected. Yeah, as much as it is now. It's like. Like in The Last Kingdom, that guy ran to Wales, like it was this far off land, and it was just like, and he walked all the way there from wherever he was,
But they were afraid to go there
They were afraid to go there because it was his own kingdom, and it had its own king, because Wales had its own king, Scotland had its own king.
And they were like wild.
Wild Welsh people,
Yeah. Okay, so tell me more about the Isle of Man, because it's not a tiny island, is it?
It's not. It's a pretty sizable island, actually. You can,
Yeah. Although I say that, but I think you can go around the whole outside of it in like a day.
Yeah, right? About 2 days.
You can really? Okay.
Navigate it in 2 days.
Okay.
Yeah, driving around it, you'd probably be able to do it in a day.
Yeah.
But going around it in like a boat. Yeah.
Oh no, I meant driving. Like
driving.
driving
yeah. Then a day. Then yeah.
Yeah.
Because they hold the Isle of Man. It depends how fast you're going, obviously, but you can drive it in a day. I'd say.
Yeah.
A good day. Mm-hmm. Because they hold the Isle of Man TT,
which is
it's like a motorcycle race.
Okay.
Triumph Test or something. I think it is. I've got it in my notes here now.
Yeah. I know about Triumph motorcycles from American Pickers.
Triumph, yeah, and that's like a motorcycle racing thing, the Manx TT race, 'cause Manx is what you're known as coming from the Isle of Man. You're a Manx.
Manx, like, aren't there a cat?
A cat breed called Manx cat, which are known for their stubby tails or no tails at all.
Right.
And I think their hind legs are quite a little bit bigger than a domestic cat too.
Okay.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I remember coming across a Manx cat. Mm-hmm. Or someone, either in my family or a friend of the family, had one, and I thought its tail had just been cut off. Yeah. I was like, oh, its tail's been cut off, and they were like, no, it's a Manx cat. It was born like that. And I was like, oh, because it looks all cute with no tail. It's just like,
I don't know if I won't say we here. I don't know if I knew about Manx cats before I met you. Like,
They're
I'm
a
not
breed,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's like a breed that is popular in America.
Maybe.
Do you happen to know?
Maybe. I think it's mainly on the Isle of Man.
Okay, so if you guys have ever heard of a Manx cat, then that's where they come from.
Manx.
Yeah.
Manx. That's how we're saying it.
Yeah.
And it's obviously, you think of Britain, it's very tiny. Think of the Isle of Man, it's even tinier. But it's got a lot of history. Because as of the 2016 census, the Isle of Man was home to 83,314 people, and that's nothing compared to
That's quite a big
sizable.
population for an island, I think.
26,000 of them, well, almost 27,000 of them resided in the island's capital of Douglas, and 9,000 in the adjoining village of Onchen, or Onchen, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Oh, that sounds sort of Viking-esque,
yeah,
doesn't it?
Yeah, you got Ramsey and Peel and Castleton. I think it's Castleton. It's, the Vikings had a good hold of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they used to invade the Isle of Man all the time.
I'm going to completely derail what you're saying here, because I just thought of something. I remember several years ago, whenever that guy came out. Is it? Okay, you already knew what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
There was a guy. Several years ago, there was an American guy who, I think he was just a bit of a joke. Like, he found out his
I think he actually was descended
No.
from...
Yeah. He found out he was descended from royalty and
the last king of Man.
And it was the king of the Isle of Man, right?
The king of the Isle of Man.
Okay.
Because it's a self-governing thing. I mean, but the UK just kind of protects it as a whole. It's kind of like, I don't know, like...
So their government, any laws on the Isle of Man do not come from Parliament.
They don't come from Parliament, no.
Okay.
I mean, they can be strongly influenced by Parliament. It's like say like Hawaii or Bermuda. I think Bermuda's part of the UK, isn't it? Actually, it's not US. Say like Hawaii decided, do you know what? We're going to be self-governing now.
Yeah.
And not a state of the US, but you can still defend us. Mm. It would be the same. It's Puerto Rico.
I think Puerto Rico is a better example. Yeah.
Yeah, Puerto Rico's a better example
because they're not a state. Yeah. Anyway, this guy did a DNA test or had his family tree researched or something, and it turned out that he was descended from the last king of the Isle of Man, and so he hooked up with some television network. I can't remember what, and they created a reality show.
It wasn't Stars, was it? It was.
They created a reality show for him where it was like TLC or something.
TLC or something it was,
he went over there.
He went over there and
to try to claim back the
throne.
And he was going around the Isle of Man and the people
saying,
were
"Hey, I'm your king,"
Yeah. And the people were just laughing at him.
People were just kind of laughing at him, and he's like, "Oh, what would you say if I told you I was the king of the Isle of Man?" And the Lawson would say, "Well, Queen Elizabeth would have something to say about that, because she's the head of state here. They
recognize
her as queen now. Yeah. But she's it's kind of like it's a gray area because it's like she's not because this is a self-governing province and it's been there's a lot of history here and the UK has never formally staked its claim here.
Oh, really?
It's never really, I mean, if it had, it would just be, an island. Yes, this is an island belonging to England. Scotland.
It's a really interesting place, isn't it?
It's considering how weird that, because I'm sure all over Europe there's weird bits. Like there's probably a town in Germany that was never part of Germany or something like that. I'm just thinking off the top of my head here. Mm-hmm. But I mean, with Britain being an island and having such great power at one point, you'd think, they just snap everything up. They got Ireland at one point, so why not the Isle of Man?
Yeah.
But for some, reason. There's been like laws and stuff like that, and they've stuck to them.
Yeah, weird.
It is weird but it's a pretty, it's very pretty, the Isle of Man. From pictures and everything I've seen, there's a lot of the
We've
town
seen
of
vloggers
Douglas.
go around there.
Yeah.
How do you get there? By ferry, I guess?
The Isle of Man steam packet, which is the oldest operating ferry service in the world,
Which leaves from Ireland, or...
It can leave from Liverpool.
Oh, goes from Britain, okay.
And it can come from, I guess it can come from Ireland too, as well. And goes like to Douglas or to Ramsey or, somewhere.
And these are towns?
Towns, yeah. Douglas is the capital of the Isle of Man.
So do they have their own prime minister or president? What do they call their head of government?
I guess he's like the first minister.
Or governor or something?
There's a lieutenant governor there.
Okay.
So, the Lord, she's, the Queen's the Lord of Man.
Okay.
The monarch is. And then there's a lieutenant governor who rules in her steed,
Okay.
So it's kind of like that kind of thing, she'd be installed. So it's kind of like the UK help out, I'm sure, with government stuff, but they can make their own laws. I mean, it's, they can say, oh, England's doing this, but we're not going to do it,
Yeah.
Britain's doing this, we're not going to do it.
Yeah. So, like, Brexit and everything didn't affect them.
Brexit didn't affect them, no.
Are they part of the EU, though? Do we know?
There's a grey area there. When Brexit happened, they could still trade with the EU.
Yeah.
And they could still have, like...
How's
they
that,
didn't...
though?
The tariffs and everything coming from the EU, because, I mean, they started putting tariffs on it, on imported and exported goods. Didn't affect them. So people were like, oh yeah, let's go to the Isle of Man and just get everything from the Isle of Man.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like
but it's
a lot of companies started to set up their business on the Isle of Man and have an Isle of Man address because it was like cheaper for tax reasons or whatever.
But I guess it would then, like, imports would go to Ireland and then go down from there to the Isle of Man, because it's a bit awkward, isn't it, that the UK, England and Scotland and Wales are now, they're not, I mean, they can still trade with Europe, but it's just a different thing than it was.
Oh, yeah.
And then the Isle of Man is right there, but they can still trade with Europe, like, same as it was.
Yes.
So it's just, that's so...
The Republic of Ireland is still in the EU.
Yeah.
So they can trade...
Yeah.
With the EU, fine. They get everything, there's no shortages, whatever. Everything's coming from the EU and everything. So the Isle of Man, even though it's not formally part of the EU, because it's still being protected by the UK. Yeah. So I guess it's such a grey area. I guess, if they wanted to become, they'd have to say, well, you're going to have to find, you're going to have to get your defense from somewhere else.
You're going to have to get your king over here from America.
No, he abdicated his throne years later. He was like, not into that.
Yeah, he moved his family over there, didn't he?
It was like for 2 weeks or something, surely.
And what were they... I don't know. Dominic and I watched a few episodes.
We watched a few episodes, and
we
it was
were just like, oh, God.
He was this... I don't know where he was from, Minnesota or something.
I don't know. I don't remember.
And he was just this guy, and he researched his family tree, and he goes, oh, I'm related to royalty. And then everybody's like, oh, yeah, you are. Oh, yeah, Yeah. So, you need to go over there, and it'll be a funny show and stuff. But
it's funny because he went over there, and he was like, oh, I'm descended from the last king of the Isle of Man. And a lot of the people on the Isle of Man were like, what are you talking about?
What are you talking about? You don't even know.
Yeah. They were like, do you know how far back that
You
was?
don't even know.
But I think he pissed some people off, didn't he?
Yeah,
like,
because
not everybody was just laughing at him.
Yeah, he was, because, I mean, it was that classic stereotype of the freaking American tourist coming over and being a loudmouth. Yeah. That's what they played him up as. And then he'd be like, oh, they don't like me over here. Yeah. They don't like me as being king. And
I seem to remember that it was quite cool, though, because he got to go see, like, I guess...
He got a good trip out of it. Yeah, that's for sure.
He got to go to the town where his family was from, or, Yeah, I can't remember what all. God, that was a while ago, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Does anybody remember that?
2014 or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway. But yeah, no, I looked it up randomly maybe a couple of years ago, and I saw a news item where he'd given up his claim, something, given up his claim to the throne.
I mean, what does that involve? Like, oh, now somebody else can be king of the Isle of Man if they want to.
I mean, it's just kind of like in legal law, you can't just go in there and just say, it'd be like me going and saying, proclaiming myself king, because I've got a bloodline or whatever, But yeah, no, I mean, the Isle of Man, it's just very, it's very pretty. It's very much like a retirement thing, and I think it is a tax haven.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, because you've said that a bunch of times.
It's a tax haven.
In the past, yeah, when we've been talking about various things.
People set up their businesses there, and they don't have to pay tax to the UK, because it's,
But I wonder surely they have to pay tax to the Isle of Man. I mean,
but it's at a very reduced rate, because, it's like...
It's a small place.
It's a small place, there's only 83,000 people, isn't it?
They make fun of it in shows, don't they? I seem to think some shows that we've seen, they're like, oh yeah, and I guess the address is blah 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 Isle of Man.
Yeah.
Whatever.
It's a fake, yeah. I mean, the capital, Douglas, it's the pretty little capital of this tiny island nation. Sits on the shore of a beautiful bay into which the river Douglas flows. Visitors appreciate strolling the 2-mile promenade with its excellent views across the large bay. Here you'll see such landmarks as the harbour and the Tower of Refuge, a small castle-like structure built to house sailors shipwrecked on the St. Mary's Isle. Because there's these tiny little islands around the place,
Yeah.
and they call them whatever, it's just like these little tiny islands. And then Ramsey's the next biggest town. And they call it Royal Ramsey because Queen Victoria visited there, and I think King Edward later on visited there.
Oh yeah.
And its population is 7,845 people, and it has one of the biggest harbours on the island and a prominent derelict pier that's called the Queen's Pier, currently under restoration, and it was formerly one of the main points of communication with Scotland. Because Scotland, it's closer to Scotland than it is to England. And it's always been a route for several invasions by the Vikings and the Scots. Yeah, I mean, that's why it's probably like the UK didn't want to go there, because it was full of Vikings.
Yeah.
And then it was full of Scottish people. And for some reason, Scotland gave up its kind of claim on it. I guess that was... I didn't really do too much research on that, because we were just looking at the towns and stuff, but I think... It's got something to do with all the Viking blood and, the claims that the UK has made on it, but then withdrawn. I mean, I guarantee you, if they found oil on the Isle of Man, the UK would claim it as theirs.
I guess I can see like wanting a little island like that if you're Ireland or Scotland or whoever, because it's down ahead of your country, so it's sort of like a little post, isn't it?
Yeah.
To watch the enemy come in before they actually get to the mainland or whatever, I guess you would consider the rest of Britain mainland compared to this little island.
Yeah, no, because like they used to call it the mainland, like Isle of Wight, they call the UK the mainland.
Yeah.
One of the things, though, I mean, because people go, what's the culture like on the Isle of Man?
Yeah.
And it's pretty much the same as anywhere in the north of Britain.
What's the accent like? That's what I want to know.
I'd imagine it's more like northern Britain.
Yeah.
It's like anywhere in the north, really, I'd say.
Yeah, we should look that up,
in north, it's not Scottish, but northern English.
Mm-hmm.
And a staple food...
Yeah.
You know what I'm going to say here.
No, I don't.
I mean, oysters and stuff are quite popular there.
Oh, yeah.
They've been crowned like the official food of the Isle of Man.
Island life.
Yeah. but it's cheese, chips, and gravy.
Oh, is it?
Cheese, chips, and gravy is very popular on the Isle of Man. And it's like those YouTubers we watched, they went there, and they asked the guy who was the taxi driver or something.
Yeah.
He says, what would you miss if you left here?
Yeah. What food?
What food would you miss if you left the Isle of Man and lived somewhere else? And you just go, cheese, chips, and gravy.
Yeah, so that's what they ordered.
And they ordered, and they were just like...
They're like,
it's kind of like
great.
poutine. It's kind of like poutine, but I think it's like grated cheddar cheese.
They were like, oh, if this is something you grew up with, they could understand,
Oh, God, yeah.
But just as something like, oh my God, that's so good. No.
But in the north, that's a big thing, chips and gravy.
Like...
You never had cheese, chips, and gravy?
Let's say you moved from...
Chips are unreal.
Here in the States, right? Like someone moving from the States to like a tiny island in the South Pacific or something like that.
Yeah.
You could see them maybe like longing for something like now I'm going to the south of the United States here, but like depending on where they're from, like macaroni and cheese, or like
I think that's a staple food all over
maybe
the
chicken
US.
and dumplings, or something like that. But that's something that otherwise when you eat it, you're just like, this is really only okay, but
it's really only okay because
it's something you grew up with it.
It's the same thing as like, people saying, oh, British food is so bland over here. People go, oh, roast beef, and it all tastes like cardboard, and Yorkshire puddings taste like cardboard.
No.
But it's like, yeah, I mean, to me, right? I mean, it doesn't. I'm not saying that Mexican food does.
Yeah.
And, but to someone who didn't grow up with it, that might be the case too. The Mexican food tastes like... You just find it just
only okay.
It's okay, I mean, some dishes are okay. I mean, fajitas are great.
Yeah.
Going on to that, I mean, but really, like, there's nothing beats cheese, chips, and gravy on the Isle of Man. Because you gotta love it,
Yeah.
But no, I mean, chips and gravy to me are great, but I can see people going, oh, it's a stodgy meal.
Yeah.
And there's a lot
it's
of
just
like,
kind of
it's hearty.
Brown. Everything's brown.
Everything's brown and everything's beige.
Yeah.
Brown and beige are the colours. No green. Nothing. Funnily enough, talking of Manx cats too.
Oh, yeah.
A recent arrival on the island is the red-necked wallaby.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
It's like a
bird.
No, it's a kangaroo. It's like a little kangaroo.
What? What do you mean recently arrived?
Because it escaped from a wildlife park.
Okay.
And then it just, I guess it escaped, and now it's, it's out there. I guess mating with whatever.
Oh,
so it's like,
Okay, that's weird.
So yeah, there's wallabies on the Isle of Man, red-necked ones.
Oh my God.
So you can tell what, political party they support,
I love how we're talking about food, and you say, speaking of the Manx cat. They don't eat Manx cat on the island.
No, I was looking up some Manx cats, and they look so freaking cute.
They don't live very long.
I'm sure cats don't live very long either.
No, I've read that before. I'm sure I've read that because whatever it is, genetic defect that makes their tail not grow. It's like
well, it's a mutation.
They also don't have a
that
really
causes
long
it to have a shortened tail, and the length of this tail can range from a few inches, known as a stumpy, to being completely non-existent or rumpy.
Aww.
Manx cats display a range of colours and usually have somewhat longer hind legs compared to most cats. The cats have been used as a symbol of the Isle of Man on coins and stamps, and at one time the Manx government operated a breeding centre to ensure the continuation of the breed. Another popular town is Castletown, which Ballycashtal, or Ballycashtal. For many centuries this was the capital of the island, and it's where you'll find Castle Rushen, or Cashtal Rushen.
Oh God, I wonder if that's that guy's castle.
Maybe. This former royal residence was built on
home.
the site of an earlier 13th century Viking stronghold. Despite its age, the castle is extremely well preserved and stands in a prominent location at the centre of the town.
Well, there we go.
Within an easy walk of many great restaurants, shops and hotels.
You know how I am about castles.
I know how you are about castles being in the middle of town.
Well, just anywhere.
You're walking by Subway, or you're walking by Next or Peacocks or H&M, and then suddenly there's a castle there.
Yeah.
It's a castle.
Because I just think, you're just going about your daily life, like going to work or to school or whatever, and there's just a castle there.
Yeah, she said, I mean, we talked about this, she said that in Cardiff.
In the card.
She's like, there's just a castle here.
Yeah, because it just
a castle.
freaks me out. And then you guys are just like, oh yeah, I don't...
Yeah, it's the castle.
Don't really think about it.
You don't think about it because, it's the
oh
same
yeah,
thing.
it's that castle there from like 900 and something, the year 900 something, or the year 1100 or 1300, whatever. It's just like, yeah, I see that every day. So it's just like, what do you mean so? It's a castle,
and
like,
it's a landmark, so we know if, say, meet me by the castle gates, we know where you are. You know? Meet me by the castle gates.
But what's that Ed Sheeran song where he's
the castle on the hill?
Yeah, it's just like, oh yeah, that's where he hung out with his friends or whatever,
Yeah.
By the castle on the hill, and it's just like, what?
I mean, there's a ruins of a castle in Swan. I mean, I've grown up in the UK, so I've seen many a castle ruin. Yeah. Because there's castle ruins all over the bloody place.
But this castle in the Isle of Man, it's an actual full castle?
Yeah, it's a full castle, preserved,
so cool.
And it was built... It was a former royal residence, so I'm sure it was like, Queen Victoria or whoever stayed there, or even earlier than that.
Whenever they wanted to go to the Isle of Man.
Whenever they wanted to go to the Isle of Man. Because I think they liked the Isle of Man. I think that was kind of like the Isle of Wight.
Well, it's a little bit of a getaway, isn't it?
It's a little bit of a getaway.
It's like, it takes some people a bit of effort to get to you when you're on an island,
Especially when you haven't got cell phones and all that kind of stuff, or internet.
Yeah.
Which the Isle of Man does now. It's not that far removed from modern society. They've just got dial-up, so...
Oh my gosh.
Sprinting into the 1980s there. But yeah, I think we've covered everything.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like...
And you want to go there too.
Yeah, definitely sounds like somewhere where we need to go. So anyway, hope you guys found this episode interesting.
Hope you did.
Thank you so much as always for tuning in. We really appreciate your support. Be sure to check us out on social media. We are at TButty, TEABUTTY on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and we will talk to you next time.
Talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.